At the edge of the solar system past the rings of Saturn and beyond the last mining outpost, a great academy floated in silent orbit around Ceres. The dwarf planet turned fortress school, where the galaxy's finest young warriors came to train. It was a place of gleaming alloy halls, humming drones, and classrooms that shifted gravity with a thought. Every species that mattered sent their best here, Vryn sharp-eyed and Four, armed from the twin sons of Kalis, the hulking Grown from Methane. Worlds, even the elegant Sylph with their mind-linked fleets, all of them proud, all of them certain of their place at the top. And then there was Lila Morgan. She walked alone through the main corridor, barefoot as always, her boots slung over one shoulder, her uniform patched at the elbows, her dark hair tied back with a strip of old cloth that might have once been part of a flag. No one recognized. She did not speak unless spoken to, and even then her answers were short, quiet, and direct. She carried no sidearm, no neural implant, no battle visor, just a small satchel and a strange quiet confidence that made others uneasy, trailing behind her like a shadow. Was Kale? He was no bigger than a house cat, but built like something far older. His scales were black as void space and shimmered with faint blue veins. When he moved, his eyes were slitted like a reptile's, but held a depth that unsettled even the most seasoned instructors. He never growled, never hissed. He simply watched and followed. And sometimes when Lila sat alone on the observation deck staring at the distant sun, he would curl around her wrist like a living bracelet. The other cadets called him a pet. They called her worse, in the mess hall during mid-cycle rations. A group of Vryn cadets pointed and laughed. One of them mimicked her walking style, slow, deliberate steps, no bounce, no swagger, just quiet movement, like she was trying not to wake something. "Look at the Earthborn," they said. "She thinks she's hunting ghosts." In the vents, another tossed a ration cube at her feet. It bounced once before Kale snapped it out of the air with a soft click of his jaws. The Grown cadet nearby snorted his thick chest. Rumbling Earthlings went extinct 3 wars ago. What even is she doing here, some kind of zoo specimen? Leela did not look up. She ate slowly, chewed thoroughly. Swallowed without sound, Instructor Vale. A tall Sylph with silver skin and voice like wind through glass, watched from the doorway, but said nothing. She had seen Lila in the field exercises, and something about the girl's stillness made her pause. But Academy protocol demanded equality of treatment, and so she let the taunts continue later. That day the cadets gathered in Arena 7, a massive dome, where live fire drills took place under shifting conditions. Sand dunes one moment, ice plains the next. Today it was a ruined cityscape modeled after old Mars colonies, crumbling towers, smoke machines, and hidden drone targets that fired non-lethal. Round teams of 4 moved through the zone using comms drones. Cloaking fields and tactical overlays projected directly into their vision. Leela was assigned to a mixed team by random draw. The Vryn groaned. The Grun refused to stand near her, the Sylph. Cadet simply turned her back. "Fine," the instructor said over the loudspeaker. "Solo run for Cadet Morgan, proceed." The crowd of watching cadets jeered. "She's going in alone with no tech." "What's she gonna do? Talk the drones to?" Death Lila stepped into the zone without hesitation. The simulation began. Immediately, drone snipers activated on rooftops, motion trackers swept the streets. Thermal sensors scanned for heat. Within seconds, every other team had activated countermeasures, jamming fields' heat, sinks decoy pulses. Lila did none of that. She crouched low behind a broken wall, then moved not toward cover but along the edge of shadow where light from the dome's artificial sun barely touched the ground. She kept her body low, her steps silent, her breathing slow and even. Kale stayed close to her side but did not follow exactly. He moved slightly ahead, sometimes to the left, sometimes behind, as if reading the air itself. A drone turned its lens toward her, but paused its targeting system. Glitched for a fraction of a second, then reset. By the time it locked on again, she was gone. She did not run. She did not sprint. She flowed like water around obstacles, using rubble smoke and even the wind direction to mask her sound and scent at one point. She stopped, completely pressed herself flat against a collapsed pipe, and held still for nearly 2 minutes. A drone passed overhead, its sensors sweeping just meters above her head. It saw nothing. From the observation deck, Instructor Vale leaned forward. How is she doing that? Her thermal signature should be visible even through that metal. The general stood beside her, arms crossed, his face unreadable beneath the scars that ran from temple to jaw. He was Cathari, a species known for surviving supernovas and eating plasma for breakfast. He had fought in 7 galactic conflicts and lost an eye to a Xeno warlord's bladelet. Her move, he said, down in the arena. Lila reached the first objective, a data core hidden in a basement, flooded with simulated acid fog. Most teams used breather masks or force fields. Lila tied a strip of cloth over her nose and walked in. She emerged 3 minutes later, soaked but unharmed, the core in hand. The next objective was high up a leaning tower, unstable and rigged with motion triggers. Others used grav belts or climbing claws. Lila found a vine growing up the side, real or simulated. No one knew, and scaled it hand over hand, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. At the top, she disabled the final drone, not with a weapon, but by plucking a small crystal from her satchel and placing it on the drone's sensor array. The machine powered down instantly when she stepped out of the exit gate. The arena was silent. All the other teams had failed or were still struggling. Even the instructor looked stunned. Lila handed over the core without a word, then walked past the gathered cadets, head down, eyes forward. "That's it, one," Vryn muttered. "No flash, no noise, just quiet," another grumbled. "She didn't even use the gear. What's the point of training if you ignore all the tech?" Sylph Cadet whispered. "Maybe the tech is the weakness." Lauder returned quickly, louder this time to cover their unease. "Freak," they called her, primitive relic, ghost girl. Kale hissed softly once, just a breath of sound, but it made 3 cadets jump later in the barracks. Lila sat on her narrow bunk, cleaning a simple knife. No energy blade, no sonic edge, just steel honed to a whisper. Sharpness. Kale lay coiled on the floor, his eyes half closed but alert. Outside, the window series turned slowly, its gray surface pockmarked with ancient craters and new construction lights. She remembered the forest, not this metal world. Not these cold halls, but green shadows and silver streams, where the trees spoke in rustles and the wind carried warnings. The ones who raised her never used guns, never needed ships. They moved with the land, not against it. Earth had not died. They said it had hidden, and she was its last echo. A knock came at her door. She did not answer. The door slid open anyway. It was the general. He filled the doorway, his armor still bearing the scorch marks of his last battle. His single eye fixed on her, not with anger but with something close to awe. "You moved like them," he said, voice low. She looked up but did not speak. The ones from the deep woods, the ones who vanished after the solar collapse. Still silence. "You don't train like a soldier," he continued. "You train like a guardian." Lila set the knife down slowly. "I do. What works?" The general nodded, then stepped back. "Tomorrow," he said, "there's a new simulation moon. Theta 9 shifting gravity cloaked predators, full survival mode. No extraction. Unless you signal." She nodded once. He paused, then added, "They'll mock you again?" She looked at Kale, who opened one eye and blinked slowly. "Let them." The general left in the corridor. He activated his private comm. "Prepare the archives," he said. "Bring up file, Earthborn origin, and activate level 9 clearance." As he walked away, the lights dimmed slightly, as if the station itself sensed a change back in the barracks. Lila lay down on her bunk. Kale curled against her side, his warmth a steady comfort. Outside the academy, the stars burned cold and distant. But somewhere in the dark between them, something old was waking, and it remembered Earth. Moon Theta 9 hung in the black like a cracked pearl, its surface scarred by ancient impacts and veiled in shifting storms of ionized dust. The Academy dropship hovered low before releasing its cargo. 6 teams of cadets each dropped into a different sector with nothing but basic survival kits and one rule: find the beacon and signal for pickup within 72 hours. Most cadets activated their gear the moment they hit the ground. Grav stabilizers, thermal cloaks, comms, relays. Lila landed in a canyon where the gravity changed every few minutes. One moment she weighed nothing. The next she was slammed into the rock hard enough to crack ribs. She rolled with it, used the shifts to leap across gaps or press herself flat. When the pull turned sideways, Kyle stayed close, his claws digging into stone even when the ground seemed to tilt 90 degrees. Within hours, the first team was down. A Vryn squad triggered a sonic trap hidden in the rocks. Their comms fried their minds. Scrambled, they curled up screaming until medevac drones found them. Another team, the Groan and 2 Silth, tried to cross a salt flat, only to sink into quicksand that pulsed with bioelectric charge. They were pulled under before they could fire a distress signal. By the second day, only 2 teams remained, and then silence. No signals, no movement, no life signs. The command deck buzzed with tension. "They're dead," one officer said flatly. The general stood at the main viewer, arms crossed, his single eye fixed on Lila's. Last known coordinates, nothing had moved there in 12 hours. "Maybe she ran, maybe she hid, or maybe she's waiting," he said. On the moon, Lila was not waiting, she was hunting. The predators were not drones, they were real creatures. Native to Theta 9, pale 6-legged things with no eyes but mouths full of needle teeth. They moved through the rock itself like ghosts phasing in and out of solid matters. He had seen one take down a Grand Cadet the night before, watched as it melted through the ground, grabbed his ankle and dragged him under before he could even shout. So she stayed off the ground when she could, slept in narrow crevices high on canyon walls, moved only when the wind howled loud enough to mask her steps. She drank from condensation. She caught in a cloth tied to her wrist, ate lichen. She scraped from shadowed rocks. Kale found the first cadet. Silth girl half buried in scree, her leg broken, her face pale with shock. Leela approached slowly, hands open, no sudden moves. The girl flinched, expecting death. Instead, Lila knelt, bound the leg with strips of her own uniform, gave her water from a small canteen, then lifted her onto her back without a word. They moved through the storm. Gravity shifted again, throwing them sideways. Lila caught them both against a rock face, her fingers digging into cracks. Kale hissed a warning. 3 predators emerged from the stone ahead, their forms rippling like heat. Hazelila set the Silth down gently behind a boulder, then stepped forward. She did not draw a weapon. Instead, she reached into her satchel and pulled out 3 smooth stones, each etched with faint symbols. She threw them in a triangle around the creatures. The stones glowed. The predators shrieked, not in pain but in confusion. Their forms flickered, then solidified, trapped for a moment. Layla ran. She did not look back by dawn. She had found 2 more cadets, one Vrin, one Gron, both unconscious near a dry riverbed, both bleeding from strange burns. She carried them one at a time to a cave. She had marked the day before its entrance, hidden behind a waterfall of charged dust. There she cleaned their wounds with crushed herbs from her pouch, pressed her palm to their foreheads, and whispered words no one at the academy had ever heard. The Vrin woke first. He saw her kneeling over the Groan, saw Kale curled near the entrance, saw the symbols drawn in ash on the cave wall. "You saved us," he said, voice hoarse. Lila nodded. "Why, because you are alive." He looked away, ashamed. Back at the academy, the command staff argued. "We have to call it off. This moon is too dangerous." The general did not move. "Wait, but sir, there's been no signal. No movement for 36 hours. Then wait on the moon." Lila stood at the edge of a deep chasm. The beacon was at the bottom, according to her map, but the walls were sheer and the air thick with static that scrambled even basic sensors. She tied a rope made of woven vines and torn fabric and began to descend. Halfway down, the gravity reversed. She fell upward. Kale leapt after. Her caught her wrist in his jaws, not hard, just enough to hold together. They slammed into the opposite wall. Layla grunted in pain but held on at the bottom. She found the beacon, a simple metal box pulsing red. She activated it. A tone echoed through the canyon. Within minutes, the sky lit up with search beams. The dropship descended. When it landed, Leela was alone, standing in the dust. But as the ramp lowered, the medics froze behind her. Staggered 3 cadets, bruised, exhausted, but alive. The Vrin leaned on the Groan. The Silth limped between them. All of them stared at Lila like she was something from a dream. The ship's crew said nothing as they loaded the wounded. Lila walked up the ramp, last Kale on her shoulder, as the ship lifted off. The general watched from the command deck, pull the footage he ordered, every sensor, every angle from her sector. Hours later, in his private chamber, he replayed the recordings. There she was, moving through the storm, silent as shadow. There she was, drawing symbols in the dirt that made no scientific sense but somehow disrupted phase predators. There she was, pressing her hand to a cadet's chest, and the bio readout spiking, then stabilizing. And then he saw their breathing. It was wrong, not wrong as in broken, but wrong, as in not human. Humans breathe in cycles of inhale, exhale, pause. Hers was a 4-part rhythm. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. The same pattern used by the old ones. The forest guardians. The ones who vanished after the solar wars. The ones who were not human at all. He leaned back, his face grimaced. "Activate lockdown protocol," he said, "and seal all archives related to Project Earthborn." As he spoke, alarms blared through the station, multiple contacts emerging from the outer belt. Unidentified fleet. No hails, no transponder, just silent ships shaped like blades. The general knew those shapes, harvesters. They had not been seen in 50 years, and they only came for one thing: the last of the Earthborn and the medical deck. Lila sat quietly while a medic checked her vitals. "Your pulse is slow," the medic said, almost too slow. Lila said nothing. Outside the window, the stars seemed to dim as if something vast was passing between them and the light. Cale lifted his head and stared into the dark. His eyes glowed faintly. Blue. Lila placed a hand on his back. "It's coming," she whispered, and for the first time since she arrived at the academy, she did not look afraid, she looked ready. The academy went dark. Not all at once, but in layers. First the outer comms, then the long-range sensors. Then the civilian deck's lights dimmed. Corridors emptied as lockdown protocols sealed bulkheads and rerouted power to defense grids. The general stood in the war room, his single eye fixed on the incoming fleet now just past Jupiter's orbit. 7 ships long and sharp like knives. No markings, no signals, just silent approach. Vectors that screamed intent. Instructor Vale entered her silver, skin pale with tension. "They're not hailing." "They never do," the general said. "Who are they really?" "Harvesters." He said they strip worlds clean, not for resources but for bloodlines. They hunt what they call pure strains. Earthborn was one of them. Vale stiffened, but Earth is gone, dust and ruins for over a century, not gone hidden. He turned to a sealed terminal and entered a code that had not been used in 60 years. A file opened: Project Earthborn Origin. The screen showed grainy images of a forest so green it hurt to look at. Trees taller than towers and mist that moved with purpose. In the center stood a woman. Tall, slender, with eyes like moonlight and skin that shimmered faintly. She held a child no older than 5. The child had dark hair and quiet eyes. "That is Lila," the general said, "but that was taken before the solar wars. She was found alone in Sector 9 after the last battle. No parents, no records, just her and a dragon egg, no bigger than a fist." "Dragon Cale is not a pet," Vale whispered. "He is a sentinel, the last of his kind, bonded at birth to the last daughter of the old Earth Guardians. They were not human. Not fully, they were something older. Something the galaxy forgot." Vale stared at the screen. "Why keep her here?" "To train her, to test her, to see if the blood still held the old strength in. Now the harvesters know she's alive. They always suspected," the general said. "But they needed proof, and the cadets gave it to them with their mockery, their recordings, their fear. On the medical deck, Lila sat very still. The medic had left minutes ago, but she had not moved. Cale lay across her lap, his scales pulsing faintly with each breath out. Side the observation window. The stars were gone, replaced by the cold glow of emergency lights. She remembered the forest again, not as a dream, but as truth. The ones who raised her did not speak in words, they spoke in wind, in root, in starlight. They taught her to listen to stone, to read the sky like a map, to move without leaving a trace. They called her little root because she clung to life even when the world burned. Earth did not fall, it folded, hid its children in the deep places, and she was the last one they sent out, not to fight, but to wake. A soft chime sounded. The door slid open. The general entered alone. He did not salute, did not speak at first, just looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. "They're coming for you," he said finally. "I know. Do you know what you are?" She looked down at Kyle, then back at him. What remains?" She nodded. "The harvesters do not take prisoners, they dissect bloodlines. They burn memories from living minds. They believe purity is power, and you, Lila Morgan, are the last pure strain of a line they tried to erase 3 times before." She stood slowly, then let them come. The general stepped closer. "You were never meant to be a cadet. You were meant to be a key to what? To what wakes when Earth remembers." He turned to leave, then paused. "They will breach the academy within hours. Our shields will not hold. They have weapons that eat energy fields for breakfast, and the cadets. They will die unless you act." She said nothing. He left in the silence. Cale lifted his head and made a sound like distant thunder. Lila walked to the window and placed her palm against the cool, Glass beneath her touch, the metal warmed slightly. A memory stirred. The old ones taught her that all things have a voice, even steel, even stone, even ships. She closed her eyes and listened, far away, past the hum of generators and the thrum of failing shields. She heard it, the song of the harvester, cold, sharp, hungry, and beneath it something else. For they remembered what happened the last time they faced the Guardians. They lost a fleet. Then, they lost their homeworld. They ran for 100 years now. They thought Earth was weak. They thought wrong. In the war room, the general gave orders. Evacuate non-essential personnel, arm the inner decks, prepare for close quarters. But Sir, one officer said, "We have no weapons that can pierce their hulls." Then we hold them off long enough for her. For who? For the one they came to kill on the barracks level. The surviving cadets gathered weapons they did not understand fear. They understood duty. The Vryn checked his plasma rifle. The Gron tightened his armor straps. The Sylph linked their minds in a silent net. None of them spoke of Lila. But all of them looked toward the lower decks where she had gone, in the hangar bay. Lila stood alone. Kyle circled her. Once then leapt onto her shoulders. He wore no armor, no helmet, just her patched uniform and the old cloth tied in her hair. She placed her hand on the wall again. This time the entire hangar groaned softly. Lights flickered. A panel opened, not by command, but by will. Inside hung a single object. Not a weapon, but a staff carved from black wood veined with silver. It hummed when she touched it. She took it. The moment her fingers closed around it, the air changed. Pressure built. Time seemed to slow. Kyle's eyes blazed blue. Somewhere deep in the station, the general felt it too. He stopped mid-order, turned toward the hangar and whispered, "It begins above the academy." The first harvester ship fired, not with lasers, not with missiles, but with a beam of pure silence. It hit the main shield, and the shield unraveled like thread. Alarm screamed, bulkhead slammed shut. The station shook in the hangar. Lila raised the staff knot in threatened greeting. The old Earth was not dead. It was waiting, and its daughter had just answered the call. The first breach came through Deck 7, a jagged tear in the hull where the harvester beam had eaten through metal like acid. Smoke poured into the corridor. Alarms flashed red, but no sound came. The beam had silenced the very air harvester soldiers. Stepped through, they were tall, thin figures wrapped in black carapace that shifted like liquid. Their faces hidden behind smooth masks with no eyes, no mouth. Just a single vertical slit that pulsed faintly red. They moved without footsteps, without breath, each one carrying a weapon that looked more like a bone than a gun. They did not speak. They did not shout orders. They simply advanced, clearing rooms with silent efficiency. Cadets met them with plasma fire, sonic pulses, kinetic rounds. Nothing worked. The weapons passed through the harvesters like mist, then reformed on the other side. One Vryn cadet fired point blank into a harvester's chest. The beam vanished into the black carapace, and the harvester did not flinch. It raised its bone weapon, and the Vryn collapsed, his body aging 50 years in 3 seconds. His skin wrinkling, his eyes clouding before he hit the floor. Panic spread. The Gron tried to charge, but his armor cracked under an unseen force. He fell to his knees, coughing. Blood. The Sylph linked minds to coordinate an attack, but the moment they connected, a pulse ripped through their neural net. 2 of them screamed and went blind. The third fell silent forever. The general stood at the command deck watching the feeds, his face grim. They are not fighting. They are harvesting. He activated the last line of defense, seal the inner ring flood. The corridors with neural dampers. It will not stop them. Siri, no, but it will slow them. Then he turned and walked toward the hangar down. In the lower decks, Lila stood in the center of the main bay. Kyle coiled around her forearm, the black staff in her other hand. She did not move. She did not rush. She simply waited. The air around her shimmered faintly like heat off stone from the corridor. Ahead, the first harvester appeared. It stopped for the first time in recorded history. A harvester paused, its mask tilted slightly as if sensing something. Lila took 1 step forward. The harvester raised its weapon. Kale leapt, not with a roar, but with a sound like tearing sky. He hit the harvester mid-chest, and the black carapace cracked like glass. Green light spilled out. Not blood, but energy, raw and ancient. The harvester staggered, then collapsed, its form dissolving into ash. Lila did not stop. She walked into the corridor. More harvesters turned toward her. They fired beams of silence, and time twisted toward her. She raised the staff, the beams bent around her like water around a stone. The walls groaned, vines erupted from the metal floor, thick and green with silver leaves. They wrapped around the harvesters, pulling them down into the deck itself. The metal split open like earth and swallowed them. Whole alarms, dyed lights flickered back to steady white. In the command deck, the general watched, stunned. She is not using tech. She is using the station itself, on deck 5. The remaining cadets huddled in a storage bay. The last of their weapons spent. The door hissed open. They braced for death. Instead, Lila stepped through behind her. The corridor was empty, no bodies, no ash, just smooth walls and fresh green shoots curling from the vents. "You are safe," she said simply. The Sylph cadet stared at her. "What are you?" Layla looked at Kale, who blinked slowly. "I am what they forgot." She turned and walked back, toward the heart of the station. The general met her at the central junction. "They are in the command deck," he said. "They took the bridge." "How many? 7, she nodded. "Stay here," he did not argue. Leela climbed the access ladder, her bare feet silent on the rungs. Kale stayed close, his claws clicking softly against the metal. At the top she paused. The bridge door was open inside. The harvesters stood in a circle around the main console. Their weapons pointed at the ceiling as if drawing something out. One of them held a small orb glowing with stolen memories. The faces of cadets flickered inside, screaming silently. Lila stepped inside. All 7 turned as one. This time they did not pause. They attacked. Beams of twisted time lashed out walls, warped floors, buckled. Alila spun the staff. A pulse of silver light erupted. The beams shattered. The harvesters staggered. Kale shot forward, his body growing mid-leap. No longer cat-sized, but the size of a wolf. His wings unfurled, not feathered but made of shifting shadow and starlight. Breathed not fire but sound, a single note so deep it vibrated the bones of the station. 2 harvesters fell, their masks cracking. Lila moved. She did not run, she flowed, each step left. A faint green trace on the floor. Vines rose with her passing, wrapping around harvester limbs, pulling them off balance. She struck not with the staff but with her palm flat against a harvester's chest. The being froze, its mask fogged. Then it whispered a word in a language no one had spoken in centuries. Earth, it collapsed. The others backed away. For the first time they showed fear. Lila raised the staff high. The lights in the bridge died, then returned brighter. The walls bloomed with moss. The console grew leaves. The air filled with the scent of rain and old trees. The harvesters tried to flee, but the door sealed. Not by command, by will. Lila pointed the staff at the orbit shattered. The stolen memories returned in a rush of light, flooding back into the cadets below, who gasped awake in their hiding places. The last harvester dropped its weapon and knelt, not in surrender, in recognition. "You are the root," it said, voice like dry leaves. Lila did not answer. She lowered the staff. The harvester dissolved into mist. Silence filled the bridge. Kale shrank back to his smaller form and landed on her shoulder. The general appeared in the doorway. He looked at the transformed bridge, at the green light filtering through the viewports, at Lila. Standing calm in the center, he walked forward. Slowly, knelt and placed his fist over his heart. The old salute of the Solar Wars. The one reserved for Guardians. Lila looked at him. "They will send more, I know. Then we prepare." She nodded. Outside the station, the remaining harvester ships hung motionless. Then one by one they turned and fled into the dark, not in retreat and terror. The last daughter of Earth had awakened, and the galaxy would not forget her again. The Academy floated quiet in the dark, its hull scarred but whole. The air inside no longer sharp with fear but thick with something else. Awe, respect, the kind of silence that comes after a storm when the world feels new again. On the observation deck, the surviving cadets stood in a loose circle. None spoke, none moved. They simply watched Lila, who stood at the far window. Her back to them, Kale curled around her wrist like a bracelet of living night. The black staff leaned against the wall. Beside her, not held, not needed, just present like a promise. The Vryn cadet shifted his weight, finally broke the quiet. "What happens now?" Lila did not turn. "They will come back." The Gron grunted, arms crossed over his healing chest. "They ran this time. Running is not the same as gone," she said. Instructor Vale approached from the corridor. Her silver skin dimmed with exhaustion but her eyes clear. She carried a data slate but did not offer it. Just stood beside Lila and looked out at the stars. The general joined them last. His armor still scorched, his single eye fixed on the distant black where the harvester ships had vanished. You showed them what Earth really is, he said. Earth was never just a planet. She replied it was a seed, and you are its last. Sprout no. She turned now, her eyes catching the dim light like moon on water. I am not the last, I am the first. A ripple moved through the group. The Sylph cadet stepped forward, her voice soft but steady. What do you mean? The old ones did not hide because they were weak. They hid because the time was not right. The solar wars burned too hot too fast, the galaxy was not ready to remember, so they folded Earth into sleep and sent one child out to wake it when the stars aligned. You are that child. The signal Kale lifted his head and made a sound like wind through ancient trees. Outside the viewport, a single green shoot curled from a crack in the station's outer hull. It grew slowly, unfurling a silver leaf that caught the sunlight from a distant star. The general exhaled slowly. Then the war begins, not my war. She said ours. She walked past them not with pride, not with anger. Just with purpose, through the halls. Cadets stepped aside, not out of fear but respect. Some bowed their heads, others simply watched as she passed. The whispers had stopped. The laughter was gone, replaced by something deeper, something older. In the hangar bay. The staff hummed softly as she approached. She placed her hand on the wall again, and this time the entire bay answered. Metal groaned, lights brightened, and from the floor a circle of moss spread outward until it covered the ground soft and green. She sat in its center, cross-legged, Kale beside her. The general stood at the edge. What do you need, time? She said they will return with more ships with stronger weapons. They think this was a fluke. They think I am alone. Are you? She looked up at him. A faint smile touched her lips. Earth does not fight alone. He nodded and turned to leave. As he reached the door, she spoke again. General, he paused. Tell them to stop calling me human. He looked back. What should I call you, daughter of the Rue? The left in the days that followed, the academy changed. Vines grew along the corridors, not wild but shaped like archways, and handrails. The air smelled of rain and pine. Even in the deepest decks, the lights took on a softer glow and the hum of machines quieted as if listening. Cadets trained differently now. Not just with weapons, but with silence, with stillness. They learned to move without sound, to read the air, to listen to the walls. The Vryn practiced breath control. The Groan learned to read the ground. The Sylph tried to hear the song Leela heard, but it came slowly like a language long forgotten. Leela taught without speaking. She showed. She would stand in the center of a room and the air would still. She would touch a console and it would bloom with light. She would walk through a corridor and the shadows would part for her. Kale stayed close, but sometimes he would vanish for hours, returning with strange stones or feathers that shimmered with colors not found in the system. One night the general found her on the outer hull, suited in a simple pressure wrap. No helmet, just her and Kale standing on the scarred metal beneath the stars. You should not be out here, he said. Am home, she replied. He looked at the green moss spreading from the breach site, now thick enough to walk on without boots. Is it growing because of you? No. She said because the station remembers, what, that it was built from Earth metal from asteroids mined near the old homeworld. It carries memory in its bones just like we do. He stood beside her. What will you do when they return? Meet them, with vines and silence. With truth. He was quiet for a long time. The galaxy thinks Earth was weak. They think we won because of tech, because of numbers. They were wrong then. They are wrong now. She turned to him, eyes silver in the starlight. Earth did not win wars by fighting it. Won by enduring, by waiting, by growing in the dark until the time was right, and now the time is right. Far out in the void, past the rings of Saturn, past the edge of known space. A single harvester ship drifted, broken. Its hull cracked, its crew gone. But its last transmission echoed through the dark. The root wakes, and on 100 worlds hidden things stirred, deep in forests, under ice, in caves, beneath red sands. Beings with silver eyes and quiet steps opened their eyes for the first time in centuries. On the academy, Lila raised her hand to the stars, nod in threat and welcome. The war was not coming. It had already begun. And this time Earth would not hide. It would rise with roots deep and branches wide, and at its heart, a girl with a dragon and a staff, and the silence of 1,000 waiting years finally broken.